Namo oh, Ramo Ramo Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna oh, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Ramo Ramo Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Ramo Ramo Hare Hare. Welcome to all of you we're now in Durban, South Africa. Today is Monday, May 30th. We're here until Wednesday, and then we're going to Europe. And here in South Africa, we did 4 workshops on vows. One of them was recorded, and I've also recorded some workshops on vows. I think I'm going to post this other one. We have to upload it. I haven't had a computer, a working computer. I got attacked by a virus. So, on my second week without the computer. And we gave some of the files to Kush, but she didn't have a good internet connection. So we're backlogged all the way from Argentina. We're backlogged like a month. But the course is so good that I think everyone should take it. Everyone who's been initiated or wants to get initiated, anyone who's married or wants to get married, just to understand what a vow is. It's very powerful. So, for today's course, the last course, as I remember, last Monday, or was it the Monday before last? Can't remember. But we were talking about the love of the devotee for Krishna, as far as I remember. And then I don't remember if there was a specific aspect of that love that we were supposed to talk about today. I don't remember if Alana had suggested something, but I was going to suggest a topic. Unless, Alana, you have something, you can just chat it. Or if I said I was going to talk about something further. I was thinking of 2 topics. I think I had mentioned we need to talk about Krishna's love for his devotee. And I was reviewing some things Prabhupada said about that, and I am borrowing a devotee's computer, but it's a Mac, and somehow when I went to Ustream, none of the controls to do recording came up. So I didn't understand how I could. Anyway, that's the problem of switching computers. It's like learning a new language. So all the quotes are on my phone. And I think the last time I tried to access the quotes, then the broadcast stopped. Is that mirror behind you, is that a problem for anyone? Does that throw everything off? I could alter my position if necessary. Is that better? That's probably better, right? Yeah, I think that's better. Okay. Let me move the background, because we want to make this beautiful, and I have something in the background that's not beautiful. Don't go away. One thing that's not beautiful. Two things that are not beautiful. Now we have three things that are not beautiful. Well, it's beautiful, it's a bead bag. But anyway, now we have medicine, so okay, we move it more like this. Okay, so is it okay if we talk about Prabhupada's love for his devotees? Well, we could talk about Prabhupada's love for Krishna, but I was thinking we could talk about Prabhupada's love for his devotees. If that sounds like, if that's okay with everyone. The general topic is love. And we've reviewed a bit of that love. And then I think it's always nice to see the examples in Prabhupada's life of what he's teaching. Because when you teach something, it's theoretical. And if you haven't seen it practically, you kind of have to guess how that would manifest. And then you kind of guess how you would try to manifest that love in your life. But when we see Prabhupada's manifestation of love, then it amalgamates the philosophy with practice, so then it becomes clear, or you could say it becomes unquestionable of what it means. So then I thought it was valuable if we could look at how Prabhupada loved Krishna and how he loved, especially, he loved us and he loved people in general. So I'll remember some of Prabhupada's pastimes in relationship to how he understood and manifested his love for Krishna and his devotees and everyone. And we had spoken in one class about how the devotee loves everyone. And we could also describe how Prabhupada loved everyone. So one time, after Prabhupada was meeting with some guests and they went home, his servant was with him alone and he said, Prabhupada, everyone loves you. Prabhupada said, yes, everyone loves me because I love everyone. So that's Prabhupada's admittance that he loved everybody. And you could say, or you could see, that if Prabhupada didn't love everyone, why would he have taken so much trouble to come to America? But you can't separate Prabhupada's love for everyone from his love for his guru, because the main reason, or the impetus behind his coming, was his love for his guru. And sometimes Prabhupada was asked about the difficulties he had in spreading Krishna consciousness and why he's doing it. And he would refer to his love for his spiritual master. And he would say, unless I had this love, why would I take so much trouble? Because obviously there was a lot of trouble Prabhupada took, and even, as we know, sacrificed his life, or he could have sacrificed his life. So Prabhupada noted the trouble and he said, why would I have taken so much trouble? He didn't deny that there was trouble. He acknowledged there was a lot of trouble. Why would I have taken this trouble unless there was love for my spiritual masters? So in the Course on Vows, we quoted Prabhupada as saying that one of the strong impetuses, or the strongest impetus for following one's vows is one's love for one's guru. Because the vows were made to the guru. Vows are relational. Generally, they're made to people. And so when Prabhupada was given the order to spread Krishna consciousness, you could say that that order went deep into his heart, and it became a commitment that he knew someday he must fulfill. And he never forgot that commitment. If he had forgotten it, he wouldn't have done it, because I think it was maybe 42 years later that he did it. So obviously he didn't forget it. 42 years later, he executed the order he got when he was a young man. And so that's a sign of deep love for anyone when they want you to do something and that goes deep in your heart. And one time Prabhupada was asked, I may have mentioned this in other lectures, Prabhupada was asked, Prabhupada, how do we love the spiritual master? That's a great question. What does love actually mean? I mean, there's so many ways you can conceive of love, and there's so many things you could do to manifest that love. And there's also so many answers Prabhupada could give, but he chose to give one answer. And the answer he gave is, you show your love to your spiritual master. Well, we've heard one answer was by how you cooperate, but it was contextual. So Prabhupada had many answers for love. But one answer that I was referring to here in this context was, he said, if you love me, then you'll follow the vows you took at initiation. Because many devotees were not following the vows, but they were singing Jai Prabhupada and glorifying Prabhupada as their savior and talking about how much they love Prabhupada. So he wanted to clarify that those sentiments, of course, are nice, but if you say you love and you've promised to do something you don't, then that's a contradiction. So if anyone's taken initiation, you want to show your love for your spiritual master, then follow your vows. Which you could extend that and say, follow the instructions he's given you. If you love him, you'll follow the instructions. And then we see how Prabhupada had so much love for Srila Bhaktisiddhanta that he risked his life for following his instructions. And Prabhupada really liked it when devotees took risks to spread Krishna consciousness. He saw that as a sign of a very high level of Krishna consciousness. He saw that as a sign of a high level of devotion. So, okay. I just turned on the chat, and lo and behold, was last week's chat. Or maybe it's not last week's chat. Maybe it is. Maybe it's, no, it's this chat. Okay. I'm confused. Confusion is gone. Because something looked like it was left over from last week. Lana one. Yeah, I didn't see that, Lana. We'll do it next week. The Love Krishna has for devotee. Yeah. We'll do it next week. I'd rather do it if I have access to a computer, then I can read some of the things Prabhupada said. So, you know, there's a saying, the first law of love is obedience. Have you ever heard that? So there's another saying, love is what love does. So Prabhupada was an amazingly obedient disciple, because that order stuck with him. And as I said, he executed it later in life. As he said, better late than never. But he never forgot. And then he executed it fully. And another interesting thing, that Prabhupada really, he had affection for his countrymen. And you might say, well, you know, in Krishna consciousness, we don't identify with our countrymen. But at the same time, sometimes Prabhupada would indicate that to have affection for family or to have affection for people of your own country is natural, because we have bodies, and so our family members are in association with us. We're always with them, so it's natural to have affection. It's who we were raised with or who we raise. So Prabhupada had very deep affection for the Indian people. Indian people are very pious. And his mission in India was not actually the instruction of his spiritual master, but he said that he wanted to go back and give Krishna consciousness in India, and I think he knew that it would be very, very popular in India. But I think also that those were his people, he had affection for them. So he said that it wasn't his mission, it wasn't given to him by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, but that when Krishna consciousness started spreading in America and became solidified, then he went back to India. He wanted to go back to India. So that was something he did on his own. In other words, it was extracurricular. He had things together in America and in Europe, and so that he could focus on India. That the mission his spiritual master gave him. He laid the seeds, the foundation was there, it was growing. So that was a manifestation of Prabhupada's affection for his own people. And I've also known that, I've also experienced that if you have affection for people, it's so much easier to give them Krishna consciousness, because your impetus to give it cannot be very great if you don't even like the people you're giving it to. And I know sometimes in some countries, devotees, they actually leave the country, they give up on the people, they don't like the people, they feel the people are too rude, arrogant, materialistic, not interested in Krishna consciousness, whatever it is, and they want to go somewhere where people are more interested. Like we see many devotees are preaching in Russia, but there's so much receptivity. Many devotees are preaching in India. These are devotees who are not Russian or Indian. When I was in South Africa, I came here in 1981, and I really liked the people. And at that point, I decided that I would stay here. I liked them better than Americans. I really liked. They were open, very intelligent, and they were well behaved. They were cultured. All the qualities that Americans don't have. No, only kidding. Some Americans have, but per capita, the South Africans were more like that. The average South African was more like that. And I understood something, that sometimes, because we're conditioned souls, if we don't have affection or some attraction in some way to the people we're preaching to, then we may not have an impetus to preach to them. You hear the conch shell in the background? Conch shell makes everything auspicious. Did you know that? Purifies the air. I'm just fooling around here with my recorder. So Prabhupada had this attraction for the people of India, and therefore he went back to India and spread Krishna consciousness. In a broader sense, you can say that Prabhupada loved everyone, or at least potentially he loved everyone. And his love manifested in his willingness to do whatever had to be done that would bring more people to Krishna consciousness. And wherever there was an opportunity to spread Krishna consciousness, then Prabhupada didn't think, will I like it? Will it be convenient? Will it make me happy? Will it be comfortable? Is there some material gain I will get from this? But there's a story that Prabhupada was invited to Hawaii, and it was mango season, so that was an added bonus, because that's Prabhupada's favorite fruit. At the same time, the opportunity to go to Russia opened up. And that was a huge thing for Prabhupada, to go to a communist country to spread Krishna consciousness. So they got an invitation, I believe. They got an invitation from a professor, and that was the only way they could get in, was by invitation, and it was very controlled. So Prabhupada took up that invitation, and it was not mango season in Russia, it was snow season, as far as I understand, which is probably a lot of the year. It's probably snow season in Russia. It could be mango season in Hawaii while it's snowing in Russia. So, the devotees were thinking, because of the nice weather in Hawaii and the mangoes and so forth, Prabhupada would want to go, which perhaps is true if it's convenient or there's no other engagement. But Prabhupada he said, preaching in the snow in Russia is sweeter than the mangoes in Hawaii. And so Prabhupada showed that if we can spread Krishna consciousness in a communist country, that's a great victory. And it became a great victory, as we know. And even though the austerity is greater, which they didn't have, there wasn't much to eat there at that time. I don't think you could get milk or wheat or many things. So they had, obviously, to do some austerity for the few days they were there. And I'm sure the hotel they stayed in probably wasn't very nice in those days. But that's not how Prabhupada thought. Because when you have affection for someone and you want to help them, you don't think much about your own needs. You don't really think, is this going to make me happy or not? And so that was Prabhupada's mood in preaching. And Prabhupada really appreciated that mood when he saw that in other devotees. He really appreciated that devotees would be willing to take Krishna consciousness to new places and not really know what to expect in terms of anything really, how they're going to live. At one time, I don't know if you've heard this, it's quite amazing. Devotees were planning to be pioneers in Eastern Europe, and they weren't actually certain if they could get vegetarian food there because of the climate, and at least they thought it may not be possible, and they discussed that with Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was so concerned about bringing Krishna consciousness to new places. He was so concerned that innocent people who could be receptive to Krishna consciousness would get it. And Prabhupada said, if there's nothing to eat, then you can eat meat. And that's amazing, isn't it? That he would compromise that principle. Obviously we wouldn't eat the cow. I don't think we would eat the cow. But he said you could eat other forms of meat. Or he just said you could eat meat. If there's nothing to eat, you could eat meat. If that's what it takes to spread Krishna consciousness. So then it comes to the point you have to be detached from your detachment, which is the highest form of detachment, because obviously we are detached from eating meat. None of us would enjoy it. And then we have to give up our detachment from our detachment. Or we have to not give up we have to detach from our detachment. We have to give up our attachment to detachment. So I don't think any of us would like to do that, but Prabhupada suggested that. So that was his mood, that if we could spread Krishna consciousness, if we could give it to someone, then we're willing to compromise our own principles if it will bring Krishna consciousness, if it will save somebody's life. That's how Prabhupada looked at it. He said, if it will take someone out of the material world, take them back to God, it will do it. So that was Prabhupada's mood. And then we can talk a little bit about Prabhupada's mood more specifically with his devotees. One of the things we saw with Prabhupada is that he had unlimited patience in dealing with us. Because I think it was clear to him, at least if it wasn't immediately completely clear, it became clear to him that we had a difficult time following Krishna consciousness. We didn't have the samskaras, or the impressions, that Indians have. We weren't raised in a Vedic culture. And he showed unlimited patience. And one time a devotee said, if we make a mistake, will you forgive us? And Prabhupada said, yes. If we make mistakes again, will you forgive us? Yes. Prabhupada said, I will forgive you. He said, but Krishna may not. So you can't take advantage. So Prabhupada, he was unlimitedly forgiving. And recently, I was reading a quote from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that just as a disciple should reject a guru who is attached to sense gratification or who is not speaking in parampara. A guru should reject a disciple who is fallen. And then I was thinking, this is interesting because Prabhupada had many fallen disciples, but we never heard of him rejecting anyone. Well, he actually rejected two, but they rejected him. They didn't want to follow him. But the point I'm making is, if someone was trying to follow, even though they were failing in some way, or failing miserably, we never saw that Prabhupada rejected them. We never saw that Prabhupada gave up on them. We never saw that he wouldn't give them engagement. We never saw that he wouldn't give them the time of day, so to speak. He was always there, unlimitedly willing to help them. So that's the kind of love parents have for their children. Well, you just never give up on them. So Prabhupada didn't give up on us. And many devotees said that we already gave up on ourselves. And if it wasn't for Prabhupada, we would have given up on ourselves. But he never gave up on us. And one aspect of Prabhupada's patience came from knowing that if we follow Krishna consciousness, someday we'll be purified. So he was patient with us because he knew the process worked. And so he continued to instruct us day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, despite so many devotees having difficulty, so many devotees not consistently able to follow the principles. But he believed in us. He knew that we were very conditioned and that sometimes we would slip. And that's a very high form of love. And as I said, if Prabhupada didn't love us that way, maybe most of us would have given up or failed. Prabhupada said that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was 90% strict, and that Prabhupada said that he himself was 90% lenient. So he was very forgiving. Forgiveness is also an aspect of love. You overlook the faults. That aspect of love was also prominent in Prabhupada because sometimes as God brothers and God sisters, we didn't overlook the faults, but Prabhupada would. And Prabhupada explained that once with one of his disciples who had left ISKCON, and he was being criticized, but at the same time he was still following the regulative principles. He was chanting 16 rounds, all his followers doing the same. So Prabhupada said, I guess Prabhupada's disciples were kind of engaged in a conversation in which they were criticizing that person and maybe hoping to get confirmation from Prabhupada. But Prabhupada never gave confirmation, he never criticized. And then he said, he's my disciple. So naturally I have affection, I'm his spiritual master, so I don't see him the way you see him. So Prabhupada's position as guru meant there was affection, in that affection there was forgiveness, in that affection there was patience. In that affection, he would just unlimitedly give mercy to help us. He would never give up. But, sometimes I would think maybe Prabhupada would want to give up, or he should give up, because there's so many problems in our movement. And sometimes Prabhupada said, we've taken so many headaches. I could be living peacefully in Vrindavan. But that wasn't his mood. Because of his affection for people, he couldn't not spread Krishna consciousness. And as he spread Krishna consciousness, there would be more and more problems. That was just the nature of it. And taking more and more disciples meant taking more sinful reactions, the potential that disciples would fall down. And that's when the guru especially takes karma, when the disciples commit sin. So Prabhupada never expressed that he was going to stop doing that. Even once he was sick, some mystic who could perceive that Prabhupada was taking karma through his murti in the temple. There's a murti of Srila Prabhupada in Krishna Balaram temple, not on the Vyasasan but on the altar. And so this man came to see Prabhupada and he said, you're sick, you should take the murti off the altar, you're taking the karma of people. And Prabhupada said, yes, I know. See, he was actually conscious of that he was taking the karma. Isn't that amazing? And he didn't take the murti off. It seemed, as far as I heard the story, that Prabhupada agreed, yes, I am taking the karma. And that's his love. We were discussing before Vasudeva Datta, and his love was that he was willing to take karma. So, as we had discussed in other classes, what we call love is more of a feeling, and it doesn't often go very deep. But you can see Prabhupada's love goes extremely deep. His another aspect of his love for us was that he answered every letter that was ever written to him, because he took his duty as spiritual master very seriously. Even the same questions were asked. Prabhupada wanted the answers distributed so disciples wouldn't keep asking the same questions. But even though they asked the same questions, he kept giving. He said, "Why are you asking the same question? I've answered it." But then he would go ahead and answer. So he took us as his children, and as we needed help, he would give it. And he said that he was traveling around the world, which is not easy. If you travel, especially if you're going through time zones with major time changes in time. It's really difficult to adjust. And he was doing that, and he explained why. He said that to enliven my disciples, to keep them strong, you could say in a sense to save them, because we needed that. We needed to see Prabhupada. That's why he did it. So his traveling was an expression of his love. And of course, you could say, well, everything Prabhupada did was an expression of his love. And that's true, because it couldn't be an expression of lust, right? That's for sure. Prabhupada, I think I may have told this story. I'll tell it again, such a nice story. Malati was cooking for Prabhupada, and she was at wit's end, because a woman in India cooking in Indian conditions in the early 70s, it was so difficult she couldn't continue. She was just came to the day where that was it. It was just one difficulty after another, and she just couldn't live another day with it. So this was her last day, and I think every day she'd have to get a rickshaw to go to the boat, take the boat to Navadvip, get the vegetables, haggle with everyone over prices, haggle with the rickshaw wallahs over prices, then come back and then haggle with the people in the kitchen and cook on these stoves that are on the ground with coal and get all black and smoke in your face and this and that. And haggle with the treasurer to get the money to buy the vegetables, and he wouldn't give her enough, this and that. So, anyway, this one day she was serving Prabhupada. And she was serving Prabhupada's godbrothers, and she was feeling as a young woman a little embarrassed to be serving these older men, sannyasis, so she covered her head and trying to kind of be unseen. And Prabhupada, he's amazing because he knows what's going on in people's minds and hearts. So he turned to his godbrothers, and he was glorifying her, and I think in glorifying her, he was glorifying all his disciples. And indirectly, he was glorifying his relationship with them and the affection they had. He said, "You see this woman?" I think it was really hot. She might have been sweating. He could see that it was difficult to cook and serve. He said, "You see this woman?" He said, "She would slit her throat for me. And I would slit my throat for her." Wow. Amazing, huh? So that gives some insight into Prabhupada's love for his disciples. And that was, of course that was the only time that Prabhupada said something like that, but you could see in how he would deal with his disciples that he was always willing to do whatever he had to do to save his disciples. Sometimes he did this amazing thing. This won't make sense to you. I'll try to explain it. But sometimes Prabhupada had a disciple who he felt was sincere, who he felt was being misdirected or was becoming weak and needed help or needed a push. And so in their weakness, sometimes, not always, Prabhupada gave them sannyas. And you just fell out of your chair, right? Okay. No, you're thinking, no, Mahatma's tired, he got it mixed up. That's not what he said. No, that's what I said. I have one godbrother who told me that he was married. I don't think his marriage was working. We actually lived together. It wasn't working when we lived together. The only thing that was working were the pots and pans flying through the air, like bombs at one another. So he was Prabhupada's servant for several years as a brahmachari. Then he got married. And at this point, he had traveled with Prabhupada in India for some time, but now he's back in America. And he had then gone to India for his business, and he met Prabhupada there. And Prabhupada said, "What are you doing here in India?" He said, "I'm doing some business." And Prabhupada said, "I will give you sannyas. Go preach." So Prabhupada saw him going in the wrong direction, and in order to save him, out of affection, because he was Prabhupada's personal servant for so many years, he gave him sannyas as a last-ditch attempt. As a last-ditch attempt to save this devotee. Isn't that amazing that Prabhupada did that? Did you know that? And he did it with other devotees. And so Prabhupada was willing to give some sannyas who was likely not to follow it, just to save him from a crash course, to turn him around. Amazing, isn't it? So Prabhupada was willing to engage sannyasis who had fallen down, reinstate them in positions or in their former positions, or give them new positions. When they got their strength back together, he was just like a father to his disciples, who was always willing to find a way that they could be engaged, always willing to find a way that he could help them. There's another example with some of the more senior devotees. If they were having difficulty, then Prabhupada said, "Then you can come with me and travel with me." So he would let them join his entourage. And then they would get to travel with Prabhupada, perhaps do some personal service, but otherwise just be there on the morning walks, the classes, the darshans, just being around Prabhupada. So that was his mercy, that he would let people travel with him who were feeling weak, who needed his mercy to just get their feet back on the ground. So the point is, he was willing to do something to help his disciples. Sometimes you'll see long, long letters that Prabhupada wrote. If you go through Prabhupada's letters, some of them are quite long. Devotees asking a question, and they get 2 or 3 page reply. That shows Prabhupada's concern that we understand things correctly. And then Prabhupada's writing of his books, which was done at some inconvenience to Prabhupada, because the only way he could write his books was that he would sleep less at night. And it's hard to get up after you sleep 2 hours, unless it's the afternoon. And obviously in the afternoon you probably wouldn't even sleep that long. But during the day, we're not going to sleep that long. But to go to bed at 10, 11 and get up a couple hours later, it's really difficult, isn't it? And so Prabhupada did that. He made that sacrifice, because that's the only way he was going to find the time to write the books. And that sacrifice was primarily made for us, because the main recipients of Prabhupada's books, or the main customers, you could say, are the devotees. So those books were Prabhupada's service to us. You could say it was service to the whole human race, and that's there also. But it was primarily to those who were really going to devour them, which are his disciples. At least in theory, his disciples should devour them. Should be the ones reading them the most. And maybe scholars. There's probably some scholars who read them more than we do, unfortunately. Or fortunately, depending how you look at it. But that was a very big manifestation of affection, that Prabhupada made sacrifices like that for us. And you could see that Prabhupada, he was so magnanimous that even though we were so fallen, he appreciated our association because he saw that we had some spark of sincerity, we had some spark of desire to serve him, and we had some love for him. And he really appreciated that. And as I've said before, there are many letters in which Prabhupada thanked his disciples for the service they rendered. And you think, why should he thank us? We should be thanking him. But it was very consistent. Consistent is the right word, but he would regularly thank his disciples. You can see that in letters. He would appreciate, thank, and encourage them in their service. And you could say, well, as a spiritual master, he wants to encourage us. So thanking us is encouraging us, and that I would agree. But I think also, and maybe more often, it's because he actually did appreciate that we were helping him spread Krishna consciousness. It wasn't just to encourage us. And that appreciation was an aspect of his affection for us, and his affection, and really, in the things Prabhupada said about his disciples, you could see that he had more affection for us than he had for his own children. And today we were listening to a lecture, and Prabhupada said, and my disciples take care of me better than my children ever did, or ever could, or ever would. He said one of those three. I think he said that they ever did, or they ever possibly, or they ever would do. So there's this like natural relation between the disciples and Prabhupada, and how he showed affection to them. And it was that affection that inspired the disciples. It was really Prabhupada's love for his disciples that was the key ingredient that motivated them. It was like Prabhupada said many times. He said, you should always try to pay back your spiritual master for what he's given you. You should always remain indebted, because you can't pay him back, so you should always try. And the more love that Prabhupada gave us, the more indebted we became to try to repay that love. And it was because Prabhupada had so much love for us that inspired this tremendous amount of self-sacrifice in us. And as I've often said, the level of self-sacrifice we were making was far greater than the level of spiritual advancement we had achieved. It was just based on this very strong affection that we had for Prabhupada in reciprocation for what he was giving us. And because he had so much love, it was very difficult not to have love for him. So in that sense, Prabhupada made it quite easy for us to be Krishna conscious, because he gave us so much love, so much time, every day Bhagavatam class, 365 days a year, every day translating books, every day giving us inspiration, or giving leaders inspiration, and those leaders would inspire us. And there wasn't a day that you would go by when when Prabhupada was with us, that you wouldn't feel that, in real time. I mean, of course we can feel it now, but then it was in real time. It was happening, and just by hearing what Prabhupada was doing. For us, it just translated intellectually and emotionally into, this is how Prabhupada loves us. And we would feel it, and we want to reciprocate with it. And without that love, I don't think Prabhupada could have built the Krishna conscious movement. So in that sense, you could say this movement was built on Prabhupada's love. That nobody could have spread Krishna consciousness who didn't have that deep affection for all living entities, who didn't feel, as Krishna says in the Gita, you feel the suffering of others. Prabhupada felt our suffering. His love was so genuine because it came from his ability to empathize and sympathize and feel our own struggles, feel our own miseries, feel our own frustrations, and whatever unhappiness we were experiencing and why we were experiencing it. He could feel that. And he truly wanted to eliminate it. As I said many times, when Prabhupada would arrive at a temple, he would ask, "Are you happy? Is everybody happy?" And it was, I think, gave him the deepest gratification, the deepest sense of satisfaction. If he saw that we were happy, and that's really, if you think about love, it's all about being happy that someone else is happy, isn't it? If you love somebody, you're happy when they're happy. And you could really see that that's what Prabhupada wanted. He just wanted us to be happy. And it wasn't that Prabhupada was only happy if we did certain things and wasn't happy if we didn't do certain things. If we were happy in Krishna consciousness, if someone told Prabhupada, "This Krishna consciousness makes me happy," you could just see immediately that he was satisfied, because that's just what Prabhupada came to give. He came to make people happy. And there's many, many stories in which we saw that Prabhupada suffered when he saw people suffer. I mean, it's a different kind of suffering. But his pain, the pain of other people's pains, it's not personal pain, but it's the pain of another person's pain. And you feel that pain. You want to do something to remedy it. And that's what a pure devotee is. And so that was so strongly manifest. There's other more grounded forms of Prabhupada's love, or the kind of love that we might commonly think is love. Like when you give gifts. So there was a period of time in Los Angeles when Prabhupada came back from his morning walks, and the devotees would greet him, and then they would all give him flowers. And the flowers he would get, he would give to them. So he's getting and giving. And it was like this little loving exchange, And of course, he didn't have to do it, but it was kind of just an act of showing so much appreciation for all his young disciples, and how kind of like you could say that Prabhupada knew that the struggles we were going through, and just to give us a flower and a smile was like an assurance that, I know what you're going through, and I'm there for you, and I support you. So he did little things like that. He would give away things to his servants, extra sweaters, socks, and so forth, because he would be given things. He gave one of his servants, when his servant had a child, then he gave that servant money for his child. His servant didn't want to accept the money, and he said, "Prabhupada, you're my spiritual master. I can't take money from you." He said, "No, this is for your child. I'm not his spiritual master. I'm not going to be his spiritual master. You give it to him." things like that, I think sometimes rings, so Prabhupada was very human on the practical level of love. First time that I went to a meeting with Prabhupada and a group of temple presidents, he gave us Mahaprasadam as soon as we came in. He gave us in our hands. That's a exchange, you could say a loving exchange, exchanging prasadam. It's one of the aspects of loving exchange. So on the down to earth level, it wasn't just the internal, that internally he's feeling, and he's this world preacher, and that's a manifestation of love. But on the down to earth personal exchange day to day, it was also there. It was nice to see that, because then, and you see practically that Krishna consciousness manifests day to day in acts of affection, how we can be kind to others, not take for granted that others are serving us because they're supposed to. The disciple is supposed to serve the guru. So the guru, if the disciple doesn't serve, the guru could get upset and say, you're supposed to serve, you're not serving nicely, what's wrong with you? And yell at them and get mad. But that's not exactly Prabhupada's mood. He was appreciating that service and reciprocating with it and showing love on a very practical level also. So I think it's a very important lesson for us, because you all know that when someone loves you or someone gives to you, you want to give back. It's just natural human nature. You want to give back. And if we're trying to help people in their Krishna consciousness, then the more affection we can show them, the more we can show that we care about them, the more we can show that we're interested in their spiritual life, and that their unhappiness is our unhappiness, the more they'll want to reciprocate. And the more they want to reciprocate, that means even if they serve you, but that means they're serving Krishna, because you're only going to ask them to serve Krishna. And if they serve you personally, it only means that you will use that in Krishna's service. So that's very important, and we want to kind of be like Prabhupada, We want to exemplify that mood. And I think, I've said this before, but in context of what we're talking about, I think it's even more clear. I don't think there's any greater power in uplifting people, in bringing people to Krishna, than the affection that we have for them, the affection that we show. Not show, but the affection that we have, because if we have it, we'll show it. The affection we have for people, that is felt deeply within their heart, and people want to reciprocate. And that's really the essential power in bringing people to Krishna, to create this relationship between the teacher that's helping the student and the student, and that bond of affection. And it's naturally there with guru and disciple, and it's supposed to be there with teacher and student. It's supposed to be there with anyone who's helping someone come to Krishna consciousness. And sometimes we have high expectations for people, or we become a little intolerant or judgmental or whatever. But generally that doesn't help them as much as affection, kindness. And of course sometimes kindness comes out in the form of chastisement. But if you show affection and love, then if you chastise someone, they know you're chastising out of love, so they take it in the right way. If you're always chastising, then it doesn't work. So I think this is extremely important, because really this is how Prabhupada built ISKCON. This is how Prabhupada got very young devotees who were not very Krishna conscious to do so much. It was the reciprocation of the love they were getting from him, and them wanting to pay Prabhupada back, and willing to follow regular principles, willing to get up early, willing to go out and sacrifice, to spread Krishna consciousness, to try to reciprocate the affection, and then also understanding that that is the process of spreading Krishna consciousness, to give affection because they had been given that affection, and they understood that as I have been given affection, I need to do the same thing. I need to give the same kind of affection that I've received. So then we would naturally, it was just natural to be affectionate to people because we're giving so much of it. Like they say in companies, a lot of times you find in companies when employees are not treating customers well, it's because bosses aren't treating employees well. So it kind of becomes a culture, and as they're treated, they're treating customers. Or vice versa, if they're treated well, they treat customers well. So it was very natural for us to treat people well because it was just an example that we were living in, that this is how Prabhupada treated us. So naturally, this is the way we're supposed to treat people. It's like we're handing down the affection that we received and we just give it to others. Another thing that I've seen, which is really interesting, I don't know if you've seen this, but one of my godbrothers, he had this nature where if people were very fallen kind of people, like, people who were, they had a really good heart, but they were battling with drugs. Sincere, good, pious people, but just in tough situations. Somehow or other, he was very attracted to those people, and he would easily befriend them. They would become very close. So they'd start to become devotees. And many of them became devotees. And you could see that most people, if, I don't know, maybe anybody, wouldn't have preached to them. But he had this deep affection. And I saw, because I worked with him, that when he focused on bringing someone to Krishna consciousness, that person generally would become a devotee because all his affection, time, and energy was going into helping that person. I don't know if you've experienced this, of just really wanting to help someone be Krishna conscious and really focusing on helping them and calling them and writing them and inviting them to programs and engaging them in service, doing whatever you can, and they start to become Krishna conscious. Anyway, if you haven't done that or experienced that, it's something to consider, that as you give affection to another person, it's like Krishna does something to help that person. It's kind of mystical. Of course, as I was saying, they'll feel the affection, but I think also Krishna gets involved. As Krishna sees that you, as a devotee, want to help this person, and then Krishna likes to reciprocate with his devotee, so he says, okay, well, you want this person to be a devotee, so I'll fulfill your desire. So I learned that from this devotee, just watching him and understanding that somehow or other, with these young boys who were struggling, with crime or drugs or whatever, he just had some rasa, some affinity, some frequency that they vibed together, and because of that, they became devotees. And then I realized that, and I started doing that myself. And I realized it's powerful when you focus on wanting to help somebody and show affection. It works amazingly, and sometimes, like, I would find people coming to temples or new people just starting to come, and I liked them, I wanted to help them, and nobody was putting as much energy into them as I did, and I saw how it worked. Personally, I got that experience, and if you haven't had that experience, you can do that and you'll see. And even our Shastras say that Krishna will give his mercy to any person that a devotee wants to give mercy to. So as you want to give mercy, then Krishna says, okay, I'll give mercy to that person. So that's really, this is like the really heart of spreading Krishna consciousness. It's that you really want people to become Krishna conscious. This is what you really, really want. You feel it. So it's not only, as I said, you're feeling it because you've been given it and you want to give it, you want to keep the chain of mercy going. But it also develops as something genuine within you, that you don't want to see people suffer. And you really want to help people become happy, because you know they can become happy in Krishna consciousness. So that's really the essence, I would say, the essence of what Prabhupada gave us, and the essence of how will succeed in spreading Krishna consciousness. So, this is helping you with your university assignment. That's amazing. You know, if I wasn't a devotee, I would have been a professor. Because then I could sit around and talk and get paid for it. I mean, that's a great occupation, right? Get paid for talking. Wow. If I got paid for talking, I talk so much, I'd be really wealthy right now. And you're all saying, you get paid in love of Krishna for talking. Yes. Therefore, I'm more wealthy by being a devotee. Okay, so I will end there because it's officially 1 hour is up. And I will ask you if you want to make any comments or you want any clarification of what I said, or you have any questions, and then you can just chat in your questions. Monique, what's your assignment from university? You're doing sounds like an interesting assignment. Yeah. I think this is it's a very interesting point that so many people who met Prabhupada, they could feel his love. It was hard for some people. I mean, some people were just dull. They could see that he was special. Some people could hardly see anything. But some people really felt it. I mean, they saw Prabhupada. They could feel that he was there to help everyone. He wasn't there for himself. And it's not just that they understood it, but they were experiencing that. This person really wanted to give me something. They may have accepted it or not, but he wanted to give it because it was good for us. And a lot of devotees felt that. Like I may want to give you something. It's good for you, but it may be good for me also. But in Prabhupada's case, you could feel that he wanted to give you something solely because it was good for you, and he had nothing at all to gain from it. And it was obvious that he made so many sacrifices to give it, so what personal motivation could he have had? There wasn't any. So you really felt that this person was there just for you, which is extremely rare, as we know. How many people have you met in the world that exist only to help you? That's their raison d'etre. Right? I mean, how rare is that? Isn't that rare? You meet someone and you think, the only thing this person is concerned about is me. That's like, sometimes even your parents go to school, get good grades, get rich so you can support us when we're older. So even there, it's not pure. Oh, we have so Monique, it's on who we believe is a positive leader within a healthcare setting. Okay, this is perfect, because I had this desire, maybe Krishna will fulfill it, that I would like to give workshops to healthcare professionals and nurses, because I believe that the consciousness of caring and affection will cure people because they'll feel it. I mean, I don't know if anyone's done any study on that, but it would be interesting. Because a lot of the healthcare professionals, they're doing it because in some countries you can make decent money as a nurse, and it's more about the money, and maybe they don't care about the patients. And I was thinking, if you could help people develop compassion, the healthcare providers, really, that on the level of consciousness could affect the consciousness of the patient and could actually heal them. You could, and studies have been done of people being prayed for, and the people who are being prayed for recovered. I think they did a study that it recovered faster from an operation. Maybe somebody knows. I mean, I think it's just obvious. If there's the right consciousness behind the healthcare, people will feel it. They'll feel the affection, and they'll heal faster. I mean, we healed from Maya's wounds because we felt Prabhupada's affection. So, trying to incorporate Srila Prabhupada's teachings on leadership. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, but that's the point of a leader. The leader actually cares about people, and in the corporate world, the problem is they care because often the caring it's very result oriented. So you'll hear a talk like, well, if you care, people will be more productive, then you make more money. So the reason to care is because you make more money. And it's hard in the corporate world to just get people to care because it's the right thing, because they'll say, well, if I care, does it really help anything? Because if it doesn't, maybe I should put my energy in something else, like maybe inspiring them. But whatever it is, it's all being done to be more productive. Of course, if you're in a non-profit and the productivity is helping the world, or your company is helping the world, then I guess it works, it's okay. But often it's just contaminated. It's just why be nice? Because if you're nice, people will work harder, and then you'll make more money. So that's the unfortunate side of it. And I like to say, maybe you can use this in your paper. I like to say that Prabhupada, he had 10,000 people working for him, and he didn't pay them. In fact, some of them paid him to work for him. So that's what happens when there's affection. Even in some of the corporate literature, they talk about the business as a family, because the family business model is that you'll dedicate because of affection, right? So ISKCON was very much like a family business model. We were all dedicated. Prabhupada was our father. So Sita Leela is saying Prabhupada was elderly and showed affection. It's kind of like natural that he has the fatherly position. But how can we show love? Well, one easy way that Prabhupada said is that even if you don't have love, you just follow the instructions of someone who has it. And so even though you don't have it, at least you're acting with love. At least your body is acting with love. You're representing his love. That's the point. So your spiritual master has love. He tells you, I want you to do this. You go out and do it, and you help so many people. Even though you don't have love, you gave your spiritual master's love by executing his instruction to love them in the way he would love them if he were there. So like one example would be distributing a book or distributing prasadam. That's a manifestation of love. So maybe the desire is not in my heart, or the desire didn't originate with me. It originated with Prabhupada, came through your spiritual master. Now you go out and distribute a book. And then you're thinking, I'm distributing books because my spiritual master asked me to do it, but I don't love these people. But that's okay, because by doing that, the love will come. But still, you are loving the people even though you're not loving the people, because you're representing the love of someone who asked you to do that, and it's an act of love even if you don't feel it. So that's where it starts. I would say it can't go that way forever, because if people don't feel some affection, then they're not so inclined to reciprocate with you, and they're not so inclined to take a book because they feel like you don't really care about me. So your book distribution is obviously more empowered if you develop some concern or affection. The other way of looking at it is that as a devotee advances, compassion is a natural symptom that develops. So as we become more Krishna conscious, it's going to be natural that we'll feel this way. And I think that's obvious. You see the dedication of so many devotees, so they do feel this way. Okay. Yeah. All right. Transcendental leadership, leaders who care. I mean, we have these stories of great leaders, Bhagavatam, Mahabharata, and they would see the citizens like their children. That's how they would deal with them. They took so much care of them, and so much affection. So that's interesting, isn't it? That a leader would take responsibility for the people under him with the same affection he would have for his own children. That's real leader. If a leader cares about you, you feel satisfied, you feel happy. And so many problems in leadership come when people don't feel cared for, they feel exploited. Nobody likes to feel exploited. When you come to this point when you feel protected, then you actually would like to be exploited by that person. Say, hey, I'll be your slave because I feel so much affection and protection. Just whip me into action. That's a different level. That's kind of like the slavery of love or affection. You want to be exploited. You don't look at exploitation as a bad word. Exploit me fully in Krishna's service. Let me use my body fully. Let me give all my energy in Krishna's service to the point when I lay down at night, I count to 3, I'm so exhausted I fall asleep. That's a natural byproduct of being loved. And that's why in leadership, affection is so important, because where there's affection, there'll be dedication. If someone's really affectionate to you, you want to reciprocate. That's human nature. And when they're not and they feel exploited, it's people get frustrated. They're not inspired. It's just a job. And, job means do as little as you have to do, right? So Monique says, it's on who we believe is a positive leader within healthcare setting. So yeah, the person I'm describing, I think, would be the most positive. And then she says, what is the connection between affection and humility? I don't know if you can really be affectionate if you're not humble. Because first off, nobody likes people who are proud, because it's almost like affection and pride seem to be two different ends of the spectrum. At least from the spiritual standpoint, prema and humility manifest. Humility is the cause of prema, and prema is the cause of humility. So, where there's pride, there's control, there's manipulation, or there can be, or there often is. So it doesn't allow the platform for affection to manifest. And humility, there's many forms or many aspects of humility. But humility also means that you can admit you're wrong, and that strengthens affection. And they find in psychology where you're the least pretentious, there'll be the best relationships. So where there's humility, there's no pretension, and then the relationship is based on what's real. If someone can apologize, if someone can admit a mistake, then the affection becomes stronger. The more real it is, the more affection, the more the relationship can develop. So people appreciate humility. A lot of times we say, well, if I'm humble, people will run all circles around me. And that may be true in some environments, but it also may be a misunderstanding of humility. But if you define humility as a lack of pretension, there are many definitions, as I said, but if you use one definition as humility is a lack of pretension, then that strengthens relationships, because there's more honesty there. There's more straightforwardness, right? In one sense, you could say humility is the basis for all good qualities. And just proud people we're not generally attracted to proud people unless we're proud. And so relationships with proud people, they don't go very deep because proud people are more interested in you honoring them than being real. So another quality of humility is it allows you to listen to people because you're not so concerned about what you think. So if you can listen, that also helps relationships, right? Doesn't it? Yeah. Listening is a very important aspect of relationships. Okay. So now we're at the hour and 15 mark. Hour and 15 minute mark. So, does anyone else have any comments or questions? Somebody get me an engagement in a hospital. I would love to talk to the workers there and explain to them how their consciousness affects their patients. And then if we do that, Alana, you could get some research, or all of you could help. I'm sure there's enough research on consciousness and even consciousness in the healthcare industry of how the consciousness of the doctor, the nurses, the healthcare givers, it affects people. And experiments with praying for people. Yeah, it would be great, I think, because it's so Krishna conscious. Healthcare professionals also mean psychologists. It's if you're praying for the person you're trying to help, that's powerful, I think. And I think, really that's the only way to do it, right? You could like Prabhupada said that there are a lot of times in letters Prabhupada would say, I'm praying to Krishna for your advancement. Please accept my blessings. And then I'm praying to Krishna for your advancement. So if someone's praying to God for your well-being, that's perfect. That's what they should do if they're trying to help you, right? So spiritual master is always praying for his disciples. Always praying that they're doing well. Always concerned that they're doing well. If they're not doing well, he wants to help them. Yeah, Bhaktivedanta Hospital. Yeah, Bhaktivedanta Hospital. Yeah, Bhaktivedanta Hospital, they make devotees. The patients come in and they come out devotees. And they were coming in for a physical ailment. Because of the mood of the devotees is so great. It just impresses people. And of course they get Krishna consciousness. There's this devotee Jayananda, and we celebrate his disappearance day. He was the devotee who developed the first Rath Yatra in ISKCON, and then he developed the first Rath Yatra in New York and the first Rath Yatra in Los Angeles. He was an amazing devotee, and anyone who met him was really, really impressed by his intense humility. They're impressed because I don't think I've never met anyone who was as genuine and as humble as Jayananda, and I think anyone who met him felt the same way. It's just you couldn't ignore him. He was so deep. He was so unpretentious. He was so real about his fallen condition, and so appreciative of others. And that's another aspect of humility. It allows you to be appreciative, because when you're proud, you're critical. That's where criticism comes from, pride. So if you're humble, you tend to appreciate people more, and so obviously if you're appreciating people, it develops a good relationship. Proud people are not appreciative, and they tend to be judgmental and critical. So it's not really a good place for developing a relationship with someone, a good relationship. Yeah. So let's see if we can, I don't know, maybe that's something we can look into. We actually haven't seriously looked into doing engagements in the healthcare industry. We've looked into the corporate industry, but I sense that the healthcare industry is actually, it's closer to Krishna. What we would teach is closer to Krishna consciousness, or easier to present Krishna consciousness in that environment than it would be in just a standard corporation, because the healthcare profession, people are very focused. Even if you're, let's say, it wouldn't be interesting, let's say you just work in the laboratory, but then you teach the people in the lab to pray for that person. Everybody in the hospital is praying for all the patients. That would be quite interesting to see what would happen. So maybe we can meditate on that. And maybe some of you know people in that profession who work medical centers or wherever, and we could do some kind of little workshop, even just a talk, just to get it started. I think it'd be really good. In fact, I would like to do it, because it's just natural for someone who's Krishna conscious to do it, and it's different than doing a corporate presentation, which is often they're looking for more strategic things that will produce immediate results. So Monique, if you can do that, or you can help. If any of you on your own want to do a little research about praying, how praying, and the relationship between praying for people and their health, the relationship of compassion towards others and health, I'm sure there's information out there. That would be really nice. Okay? So I think we can end now. If you are somewhere in the world, I don't know, where in the world would it be late for? Yeah, it's late for you, and it's 9:30 at night for you right now, right? So we better end to let you go to sleep. Go to sleep now if you're in Australia, and you can get up early in the morning. And Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.